Karen sisters parked inside my garage without permission. So I locked it and went on a 10-day trip. The sun glared off the hood of my truck as I jogged the last few feet up my driveway, sweat trickling down the back of my neck. I reached into my shorts pocket for the garage remote, ready to escape the sweltering afternoon heat. But something felt off. My steps slowed as my eyes locked onto the garage. The metal mesh gate was halfway closed, casting a crisscross shadow on the concrete. But that wasn't what stopped me. Parked neatly inside my private garage was a silver Mercedes-Benz. I blinked, thinking I must have jogged too far and stopped at the wrong house. But no, there was my blue recycling bin, my small cactus plant, my familiar dusty workbench through the mesh siding. And there, gleaming like it owned the place, was a luxury sedan I had never seen in my life. I scanned the quiet street, chest rising with short, confused breaths. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Turning toward the sound, I spotted two women lounging across the street on their porch, sipping from oversized iced tea tumblers. Both were broad-shouldered, heavy-set, and dressed in eye-popping floral dresses, one in a mix of bright pinks and oranges, the other in dizzying purples and yellows. Their matching blonde bob haircuts made them look almost cartoonish. They were watching me like they were waiting for a reaction. "Afternoon, neighbor," one of them called out, raising her glass. Her bracelets jingled with the motion. I walked toward them, pulse rising with every step. "Is that your car in my garage?" I asked, keeping my voice even. The woman in the orange-pink dress leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "Oh, honey, that's just our Sarah baby," she cooed, motioning to herself. I needed some shade. That garage was just sitting there, looked so empty and inviting. My jaw tensed. "You parked inside my garage." The other woman, the one in purple and yellow, scoffed. "You left the door open. What do you expect? It's basically community property now." "Excuse me." "Oh, relax, sweetie," Sarah said with a wide, dismissive smile. "We're part of the HOA committee. That means shared resources, you know? Your garage is technically within the bounds of the community zone." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "No, it's not. It's on my private lot." Nancy, at least that's what she later introduced herself as, snorted. "Well, maybe you should be more careful with your boundaries. If you don't want neighbors helping themselves, keep your things locked up." Helping themselves? To my garage? I stood there for a moment, stunned. My brain struggled to keep up with their twisted logic. These two strangers had quite literally taken over part of my home, and were now smirking at me like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm going to need you to move your car." "Now," I said, trying to stay civil. Sarah leaned back and crossed her legs. "We're not home much during the day. It's not like we're in your way. It's not about being in the way. You can't just take someone's garage. That's trespassing." Nancy waved a hand. "Oh, please, don't be dramatic." I pulled out my phone and, without a word, started recording. Their smug expressions didn't waver for a second. "Recording us?" Sarah laughed. "What are you going to do, post it on TikTok?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm documenting your admission that you parked on private property without permission." Her smile faltered slightly. "Wow, that's hostile. Maybe you shouldn't be living in a shared community if you can't be neighborly." "I'll give you until tomorrow to move the car," I said, turning back toward my house. "After that, I take action." Their laughter followed me up the driveway like gnats buzzing around a wound. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the gall it took to do something like that. Most people wouldn't even dream of entering someone's open garage. But these two acted like it was their birthright. The next morning, the car was still there. I printed out a bold red sign, "Private property, no parking, violators will be towed," and mounted it directly above the garage entrance. I also taped one on the windshield of the Mercedes, just in case they missed the 20-square-foot message above their heads. That afternoon, I returned from work to find both signs gone. In their place was a yellow notice taped to my front door. "You are in violation of HOA visual standards. Remove unauthorized signage immediately." I laughed out loud, actually laughed. They were twisting the HOA rulebook now. These weren't confused neighbors. These were predators in pastel floral camouflage. I stormed over to the HOA president's house and explained everything. The man, balding and sunburnt, listened patiently, then frowned. "They're not even committee members," he said. "They just show up to meetings and complain about noise violations." "Then what gives them the right?" "Nothing," he said. "They don't have any authority." That lit the fuse in me. I returned home, typed up a second warning, more detailed and legal this time, citing trespassing and vehicle impound laws. I left it under the Mercedes's wiper blade. It was gone by morning. In its place was an empty Starbucks cup and a crushed granola bar wrapper on my driveway. That night, I caught Nancy giggling with a neighbor, mimicking my voice. "I'll take action," she squealed mockingly, holding up an imaginary camera. The next day, there were fresh tire marks across my lawn. They didn't even try to hide the tracks. I had no proof, but I knew. This was intentional. A line had been crossed. I sat at my dining table, staring at the garage door on my security feed. Their car sat there like a taunt, daring me to respond. And I did. The next morning, I waited by the window, sipping my coffee, watching them saunter down the street in flip-flops and oversized sunglasses. I heard the familiar jingle of Sarah's bracelets and the sharp click of Nancy's heels on the pavement as they got into a neighbor's car. Off to brunch or wherever else they terrorized. I waited 5 more minutes, then walked outside, remote in hand. The garage mesh gate was still half open. Their Mercedes sat smug and silent, the morning sun glinting off its freshly waxed surface. With a slow, deliberate press of the remote button, the gate lowered until it clanged shut against the driveway. I stepped to the side door, wrapped a chain around the handle, and snapped a padlock into place. Then I took photos, clear, timestamp proof that the vehicle was secured safely inside, untouched. I uploaded a 10-second clip to TikTok, their Mercedes behind bars, the gate shutting in slow motion, captioned, "When HOA Karens hijack your garage, so you hijack their plans." Within hours, the video was picking up steam. I tossed clothes into a suitcase, locked up the house, and grabbed my passport. By nightfall, I was on a plane. 10 glorious days of peace were waiting. No more Karen sisters. No more iced tea smirks. Just quiet. The last thing I did before takeoff was switch off my phone. The next 10 days would be mine. And theirs? Well, theirs would be something else entirely. The sun was barely up when Sarah and Nancy strutted back into the neighborhood, arms full of grocery bags and the kind of self-satisfaction only delusion can buy. Their matching floral dresses fluttered in the morning breeze like flags of entitlement. Sarah's orange and pink monstrosity clashed painfully with the dawn sky, while Nancy's purple-yellow pattern buzzed like a wasp swarm against her skin. They were laughing about something, probably another insult aimed at one of the neighbors, until they reached my driveway. Then the laughing stopped. The garage was sealed. The silver mesh gate, now fully shut, locked, and chained like the door to a fortress. The Mercedes sat silent inside, imprisoned behind steel and wire. My note was taped neatly to the outside. This vehicle has been secured for unauthorized trespassing. Access restricted until further notice. Owner unavailable. Nancy stepped back like she'd seen a snake. Sarah's voice cracked. No, he didn't. He did, Nancy muttered. Her round face twisted into disbelief. He actually locked our car up? His car now, came a voice from a nearby porch. Old Mr. Benson, sipping his morning coffee like a spectator at a sports event. Guess he warned you. Sarah spun around, face flushed with rage. This is illegal. He can't keep our car hostage. It's not a hostage situation if you broke into his property first, Benson said calmly, then disappeared back inside. They tried calling me. I didn't answer. My phone was off and tucked inside the drawer of a beachside bungalow a continent away. Bali didn't have HOA drama, only waves, sun, and silence. Bliss. Back home, the Karen twins were unraveling. They spent the next 2 hours pacing the sidewalk in front of the garage like 2 lions locked out of their own den. Neighbors peeked through curtains and blinds, pretending not to watch. One kid even filmed them from behind a bush, muffling his laughter. At noon, Sarah called a tow truck. When it arrived, she pointed at the garage like a general giving orders. The driver, a skinny guy with a clipboard and mirrored sunglasses, took one look at the locked metal mesh and frowned. "Is that your property, ma'am?" "It's a community property," she snapped. "Can you prove that?" Nancy piped up. "We're with the HOA." The driver glanced at the papers Sarah shoved in his hands. "This isn't your house, and you've got no keys." "Sorry, I can't help you. That's trespassing. We're not allowed to break and enter." "What do you mean break and enter?" "That's our car." "Then maybe don't leave it in someone else's garage." He tipped his hat, got back in the truck, and drove off. The sisters fumed in silence. Their cheeks were red, but not from the sun. Nancy kicked at the grass. What now? Sarah pulled out her phone and started ranting on the neighborhood Facebook group. "If anyone sees a man named Ethan wearing white shorts and a God complex, tell him we're calling the police." And they did. The officer arrived an hour later. A bored-looking guy in his 50s with a paunch and mirrored aviators. He listened as Sarah waved her arms around, explaining how they were unjustly punished for simply using underutilized space. The officer stared at the locked garage, took a few notes, and finally said, "Ma'am, this is a civil issue. You parked in someone else's private property. He didn't damage your vehicle. You'll need to file a claim through small claims court or the HOA if you want recourse." "What about breaking and entering?" Nancy shrieked. He raised an eyebrow. "He didn't break in. You did. And according to your own complaint, you never had permission to be there." Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a beach fish. But, "I'd advise you not to escalate," the officer said, and with that he left. Word traveled fast. By that evening, my TikTok clip had hit over 600,000 views. The slow-motion garage door sliding shut behind their Mercedes, set to the Mission Impossible theme, was apparently cinematic gold. I posted updates for my trip daily, each caption more tongue-in-cheek than the last. Day 2, Karen still carless. Day 5, heard they're walking to the grocery store now. Day 7, Mercedes still behind bars. They look like they've aged 10 years. The comments were relentless. Justice has never looked this satisfying. This man is the HOA Batman. They messed with the wrong garage. By day 3, the Karen sisters had resorted to begging neighbors for rides. No one volunteered. Day 4, they walked to the local strip mall, both red-faced and huffing, as they climbed the shallow hill leading out of the cul-de-sac. Nancy nearly collapsed halfway up, dropping her plastic sun visor with a grunt. Later that afternoon, they returned to the garage, this time carrying bolt cutters. What they didn't know was that I'd installed a motion-triggered alarm system linked to a neighbor's ring cam. As soon as Nancy swung the cutters, an alarm blared through the air, loud, high-pitched, merciless. They dropped everything and ran like teenagers caught sneaking into prom night. The footage made its way to Reddit. By day 6, the local radio station had picked up the story. Coming up next, Garage Justice. How one man's locked door became a national sensation. Neighbors who used to fear the Karen twins were now emboldened. One family posted a picture of themselves holding iced tea glasses in front of a locked garage, captioned, "Now that's how you chill in style." Someone else taped a cartoon drawing to the garage gate, a Mercedes behind bars with "Free the CAR" in graffiti font. Nancy tore it down the next morning and ripped it to shreds, shrieking at a 12-year-old girl who had nothing to do with it. Sarah tried to salvage the situation with a heartfelt Facebook post about being misunderstood and how people shouldn't punish others just for trying to be part of the community. It was ratioed within the hour. She tried to colonize a garage. One comment read, "You weren't being part of the community. You were stealing from it," said another. By day 8, the pressure was mounting. Sarah, for all her bravado, had started wearing sunglasses even at night, trying to hide the dark bags forming under her eyes. Nancy had gone quiet, no longer heckling neighbors or waving from a porch. They were crumbling. And their car? It sat quietly in my garage, untouched and undisturbed. I made sure a neighbor checked in on the property daily, sending me photos to confirm the lock was intact and no one had tampered with anything. The dust on the car's windshield had become a canvas for neighbor kids to leave messages. Garage, sweet garage. Park better next time. Don't be a Sarah. By day 9, Nancy was filmed crying. Not sobbing, just standing in front of the garage, her head resting against the metal, shoulders shaking silently. It wasn't rage anymore. It was defeat. The viral video of her breakdown would later rack up over 2 million views. And I wasn't even back yet. That night, a final message came through. My neighbor forwarded it from the group chat. Please, Sarah had written. Does anyone know when he's returning? No one responded. I was watching the sunset dip behind the ocean when I read that message. The breeze smelled like salt and coconut. A waitress brought over a plate of grilled fish and smiled. I nodded, leaned back, and took another sip of my drink. Let them stew. Day 10 arrived. My return ticket was booked. My bags packed. I flipped through the photos of the last week on my phone, temples, waterfalls, beaches, and finally landed on the garage picture from day 1. I smiled. The plane lifted off just after midnight. By the time I landed back in town, the Karens were waiting. And this time, I had something special planned for them. I stepped out of the taxi just after sunrise. The neighborhood was still, bathed in the cool gray hush of early morning. My sneakers crunched against the driveway gravel as I rolled my suitcase up toward the house. The air was heavy with the scent of dew and freshly mowed grass. And then I saw them. Sarah and Nancy stood side by side on the sidewalk like two sentinels of vengeance. Same floral dresses, though now wrinkled and faded from wear. Their hair, once perfectly bobbed, was frizzy and clinging to their cheeks. Their eyes were sunken with exhaustion, but they lit up the moment they saw me. There he is, Sarah barked, stepping forward. The coward returns. 10 days, Nancy hissed, her voice raw. 10 days without a vehicle. Do you even understand what you've put us through? I rolled my shoulders, stretched my back like I just had the best sleep of my life, and smiled. I do, actually. About halfway through day 5, I figured you'd be feeling it. This is illegal, Sarah snapped. You can't just trap someone's vehicle like that. We're calling a lawyer. You do that, I said calmly, pulling a folded paper from my back pocket. But first, you want to read this. They stared at the document in my hand like it was radioactive. I held it out, the words bold and unforgiving across the top. Release of claim and waiver of trespass liability. What is this? Nancy asked suspiciously. A simple agreement, I said, confirming that you unlawfully entered and used my private property without permission, and agreeing that I am not liable for any damage or loss incurred while your car sat here untouched. I'm not signing that. Sarah shrieked. Cool. Then the car stays. Nancy shifted uncomfortably. You can't keep it. I can. It's on my land. It's not being damaged, and you left it here willingly. Because you tricked us. Sarah shouted. You literally admitted to taking my garage because I left it open. That's like saying someone's front door wasn't locked. So you moved your furniture in. They were fuming. Sarah's jaw clenched so tight her temple pulsed. Nancy scanned the street, realizing there were at least 2 neighbors watching from their porches. One of them was filming. Fine, she muttered. We'll sign it. Sarah glared at her, but after a moment of silent resistance, she nodded. I handed them a pen. They scribbled their names with all the grace of a child forced to write an apology letter. Thank you, I said, folding the paper and sliding it into my pocket. I turned, unlocked the padlock, uncoiled the chain, and hit the garage remote. The mesh door rattled upward, screeching slightly, like a 2 had grown weary of this drama. There it was, the Mercedes-Benz, still pristine beneath a thin layer of pollen and dust. A bird had dropped a generous gift across the windshield. One of the tires looked soft. Someone had scrawled Karen Karma in the dust on the driver's side door. Nancy gasped. Oh my God, my baby, she muttered, waddling forward to inspect it. Sarah clicked her tongue in disgust. This is vandalism. You parked it in someone else's garage for 10 days, I replied. Consider it public commentary. Nancy climbed in and tried to start it. The engine clicked, sputtered, and died. She tried again. Nothing. The battery's dead, she moaned. I walked past them toward my front door. Should have disconnected it before abandoning it. That's basic car ownership. Sarah stormed after me. You think this is funny? I stopped and turned. No, Sarah. I think it's justice. Behind her, Nancy slammed the door in frustration and climbed out, muttering under her breath. She pulled out her phone and started calling roadside assistance. They'd be waiting a while. It was a holiday weekend. I went inside, poured myself a glass of cold water, and watched them through the kitchen window. Their fury had deflated into a kind of silent resignation. The same neighbors they used to boss around now walked past them without a word, some smirking, some whispering. Sarah looked around and realized they'd lost something deeper than a parking spot. They'd lost power. The tow truck didn't arrive for 3 more hours. When it did, the driver laughed when he saw the situation. Heard about you two on the radio, he said. You're famous. The car was finally jump-started and driven off the property. I didn't wave goodbye. I simply stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching until they turned the corner and vanished from view. Over the next few days, the Karen twins kept to themselves. No more iced tea on the porch. No more loud voices echoing through the neighborhood. The Facebook group fell quiet. Peace, at last, had returned. Until the moving truck appeared. It pulled into the vacant house across the street late one morning. A family of 5 climbed out, Mom, Dad, and 3 triplet boys no older than 7. Within minutes, the yard was filled with bikes, scooters, and the piercing sound of toy sirens. Sarah and Nancy emerged from their home like vampires startled by sunlight. They crossed their arms and glared from their front steps. The boys didn't notice. One of them accidentally let loose a Nerf dart that sailed through the air and bounced harmlessly off Sarah's shin. Her gasp could have registered on the Richter scale. She marched across the street, finger raised. You need to control your children. The boy's mom stepped into view, holding a squirt gun and a leash. At the other end was a massive Labrador, tongue out, tail wagging. Boys, she called out cheerfully, target practice. Without hesitation, all 3 kids aimed their squirt guns. Sarah screamed as cold water soaked her from chest to knee. Nancy tried to duck away but slipped on the curb and sat down hard, groaning. The Labrador barked once, loud and protective. From my porch, I took a long sip of iced tea, watching the chaos unfold like the opening scene of a sequel. The sunlight glinted off the rim of my glass as I muttered to myself, "Welcome to the neighborhood." And as the laughter of the children mixed with the indignant cries of the Karen sisters, I couldn't help but wonder if karma had just unpacked its bags and moved in permanently.